Hello there! Today we're doing something a little bit different than usual. So we're going to be breaking down a solo I recently played for JTC's Jam of the Month. So I'll go through the solo and explain some of the ideas, concepts and devices that I used when I crafted it. And hopefully this will give you some ideas that you can implement into your own playing. Alright, so let's get started. So let's play it. Okay, so the first thing we can dive into is this intro thing, which is sort of just a chromatic thing leading into the fifth of the chord. And this thing of doing chromatics up to a chord tone like this within a scale, that's something you might hear in jazz a lot, you know. And you can kind of do that within the scale in any place there's a minor third. And right now I'm in G major, by the way. And if you have a major third, you can do it kind of like this instead. So you're skipping that note. So that's sort of a little device you can use to play yourself into a chord tone. So this is just kind of a little device to play yourself into a note. And that's a topic we'll be getting into a lot here. The idea of playing yourself into something instead of just starting right on the beat. Because we could start it right here as well. But I think it's nicer when you lead into it with something. That makes it sound a bit more natural and organic. Okay, let's listen from the start again. And then you can notice in this area there's a lot of space. So especially at the beginning of a solo, that can be really nice to just leave a decent amount of space. So this phrase kind of gets to breathe a little bit before we get into the next thing. And here we got something that I think is important. And that is the articulation and the slides and the little hammer-on things. So if you take this phrase, for example, like this. So if we were to play that without any articulation, it would sound sort of like this. And then with the articulations. So that makes a huge difference in how lively and organic it sounds. It becomes a lot more musical once you have a few little things like that in there. And you can see that I'm using a mixture of hammer-ons and pull-offs and also slides. And you see these are grace notes. So you got these that thing of, you know. And I think that's a really valuable tool that shouldn't be overlooked because it can really make a simple phrase sound a lot better. And you may notice I also did a little bit of grace note thing in the intro here. So you hear that grace note? So that's something I recommend being aware of. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so here's another example of playing yourself into an idea or a lick. So you see this thing right here, that's kind of just sort of a way to play myself into this whole thing. This is the important stuff, but this just leads into it. And I think that's much better than just leaving all this space empty and then starting on beat one. Because that's one of those scary things. If your playing has that feeling that everything is just waiting for beat one to start and then you play your lick. And then your lick finishes on beat one, and then, you know, you start something else on beat one, or every cool lick starts on beat one. It can sound kind of contrived and weird. So what I like to do is add in little things like this that lead me into them. So I'm still basically starting my lick on beat one, but I'm just kind of disguising it slightly. So here I'm doing it again with chromatic legato stuff. Okay, so as for the lick itself, we're on an E flat major 7 sharp 11 chord. And this section we're just playing a straight up E flat major 7 arpeggio. And then we're sliding that up into a G minor 7 arpeggio, which results in E flat major 9 sound because we have the 9 on the F. Okay. And then we slide that into a D minor 7 arpeggio. And that becomes sort of more of a Lydian sound because now we're introducing the sharp 11 as well with the A here. So now it's sharp 11, 9, 7, 6, and then sharp 11, 9, 7. So here we're kind of superimposing different arpeggios on top of the underlying chord. And this is a really nice tool because you can take arpeggios that you already know really well and use them in different settings. So here we use like 3 different arpeggios basically, but it all fit with the chord. And this can also work great with pentatonic scales. And I mean that D minor 7 there, that's just one note away from being D minor pentatonic anyway. And that would introduce the third of the chord as well. Okay, let's listen to that phrase again. And then we have the thing where I'm landing on a strong chord tone on that C there. So I'm landing on the third here. And then I'm doing a little melodic motif from there. And then, as you can see, here's the motif, which uses the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And then we just repeat it up an octave in a slightly different rhythm. But that kind of makes these two sound connected because they're kind of using the same pattern. It's worth noting that motifs don't always have to use the exact same rhythm, because these are slightly different, but they're close enough to where you can kind of hear the logic behind it. Okay, moving on. Okay, so here once again we're playing ourselves into a phrase with these 4 notes there. And then we are introducing a new rhythm that we haven't really been using here. And since I'm playing it staccato, the rhythm really sticks out right here. So I think that helps give a little bit of variety from the other rhythms we've been doing so far. And the note choices here are kind of spelling this out as a C major 7 chord. Okay, moving on. Okay, there's a lot in there that we need to unpack. So first of all, after this, we're landing right down on the root of the E flat. And here once again, we're sort of playing our way into an arpeggio phrase. You could argue that the arpeggio starts here, but I don't know, it kind of feels like it starts here and then goes on, but these notes are all in the arpeggio. But we're using sort of a different rhythm to kind of launch us into the rest of the lick. So all these notes are just straight up E flat major 7. Okay, so let's get into the fast lick. Okay, there's a lot of notes, but there's nothing too crazy going on. We're basically just playing an E flat major 9 arpeggio from here. And then we're using one scale tone here as like a passing note, so we're just using the C. And that leads us into, once again, our G minor 7 arpeggio over the E flat. And on that G minor 7 arpeggio, we alter the rhythm slightly, and we use a sweep to do kind of a triplet thing. So after something fast that uses a constant rhythm like this, it can be cool to kind of tie it off with a little bit of rhythmic variety, like we did with the triplets here. And at the end, we kind of stop along with the backing track to kind of let it breathe for a second. I think that's nice. I mean, you could also just shred through the entire thing and come in on the 1, but I think stopping with the track is kind of a cool way to really lean into it. Okay, so I think that's an interesting motivic thing. So if we start out with this, and then we're kind of just going to a very similar thing up here. But instead of just doing them straight up like that, I add in a little thing that plays me into the second repetition. So I'm adding in those two notes to kind of lead into the next version of it. So that's a useful concept for repeating ideas, where instead of just repeating it verbatim or up an octave or onto the next chord or whatever, or having this exact same rhythm, we could play ourselves into it once again. And once again, you see beat one, but playing ourselves into it makes it a bit more organic, I think. So that can be a good way to deal with repeating ideas. You play it once, and then you do play it again, but there is a slight change or something that leads into it to make it a bit more organic without letting go of the motif entirely. And I think these four notes also spell out the chord change in a nice way, where we have the C and the B first, but then when we go to the E flat, we are shifting the B to a B flat. So then you can really hear the chord change in the line as well. Okay, let's move on. Okay, just some kind of bluesy type of thing, and slightly dodgy timing on that one note there, so sorry about that. Okay, and let's see what else. Okay, so here we have kind of another example of playing into a phrase that starts on B1, you know, classic. These types of slides can also work as a substitute for playing your way into a phrase. So it gives some sort of momentum before you launch into the actual phrase. So it works, although it would probably sound weird if you did it too much, but it's a good rock guitar trick that you can use, you know. And speaking of slides, you can also see that I slide out of a lot of notes that I'm holding. It happens here too. You can listen to that for a second. So you can hear there's a little slide on this note and then a more proper slide out from this. And I just think if you're holding onto a note and giving it vibrato, usually it sounds better if you kind of do something to get out of it, you know, instead of just stop the note. So for example, as opposed to, it depends on the context, but a lot of times just doing simple little things like that can make it sound a bit more alive. Okay, so what is this lick? Well, there's a lot of notes, and I'm actually gonna make a lesson on this specific lick. So we won't break it down 100% here, but I'll take you through basically what's going on. And this is basically what I think of as a Mixolydian arpeggio. So that uses the 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7. But I'm playing it in a pattern of 14 notes, but played in 30-second notes. And then repeated. And then repeated until we can't go anymore. So we can see that the first repetition of the pattern goes here. The second repetition goes here. And then here's the ending that leads into the last note. So licks and patterns like this, where the rhythm doesn't match up with the groupings of notes, can be a really cool way to add some rhythmic variety. This is something you hear from people like Sean Lane, for example. So that's a really cool device you can apply to almost anything. You can take any lick you know that's a triplet-based thing, turn it into 16th notes. Take any lick that's 16th notes, turn it into triplets, or whatever it is. Just see what it sounds like. It can be a bit tricky because your brain is used to hearing the strong beats on certain parts of the lick, but I recommend trying that concept on some of your own licks, but do it slow, and you might find yourself getting a lot more mileage out of ideas you already play. They might even sound better. But yeah, that's basically the outline of this lick. Previously in the solo, I treated the C as a C major 7, but it kind of just felt like dominant 7 could work as well, so I went with Mixolydian stuff, and I think it works. Okay, moving on. Okay, some more bluesy kind of stuff here. Nothing too crazy. I guess the most interesting part would be the bent root note sliding into another bent note to get to that third, you know? Which once again slides out. And I think that goes into some more bluesy stuff. Yeah, and you can kind of see this as a motif as well. This bending up to that third, and then that happens here again, you know? So here's the first repetition, more blue stuff, second repetition, you know? Something that leads into the second repetition of the idea. So here we go. And I kind of bent it a little bit too far, but I guess it's okay. It doesn't sound too bad, I think. I think it's okay. Okay, so this is basically the end. We're here on the A flat major 7, starting on the 3rd, and then we're kind of just walking up the scale, but we're adding in this little sweep octave things just to create some interest. So you can compare that to just playing the note by itself. So it's just a way to give it a little bit more character. And as you can see, I'm just kind of sweeping through that B string, not even caring, just a dead string, you know. So if you did in slow motion, it would be kind of like this. So I think these types of octaves can be a good way to get some variety on guitar as well. I hear a lot of people doing this type of thing. So that's another way to use the octaves, you know. So don't neglect the octaves, you can get a lot of stuff out of those too. And then I just end on a G here over the C chord, so we're on the 5th, and then we slide it out, because that's what we do when we're done. Okay, so that's basically it. Let's do a quick review of some of the concepts. So we got chromatic stuff leading into chord tones, and then we have grace notes using slides and hammer-ons, that type of stuff. Then we got use of space, especially early in the solo. Then we got a lot more articulation stuff, slides, hammer-ons, grace notes to make a phrase more alive. Then we got playing ourselves into licks instead of starting straight on beat 1. We got superimposition of arpeggios and possibly pentatonic scales over a single chord. And here we got a use of motifs with slightly different rhythms. And here once again we got playing ourselves into a phrase. And here we got like a strong rhythm that sticks out a bit more than some of the other stuff. And here kind of playing ourselves into an arpeggio. And here's just a quick, fast arpeggio lick, which has a little bit of rhythmic variety at the end before the big climax type moment. And then here we got a motif that we repeat with something playing slightly into the motif. And then we got, you know, a little bit of blues stuff. Then we got sliding from dead notes, which is the rock guitar trick. And then we got the big Mixolydian arpeggio lick using a pattern of notes that doesn't add up with the rhythmic grouping to create some rhythmic interest or variety. Then we got sliding out of notes. We got more blues. We got sliding into bends and then sliding out. More blues. Repeating ideas again, but also playing yourself into that idea before repeating it. Then a little bit more blues, and then we got using octaves in a way to make something that's otherwise pretty mundane slightly more interesting. Alright, so that's it. I hope you got something out of that you can apply to your own playing, or at the very least that you found it somewhat entertaining to watch. I do realize I had some lighting issues about halfway through, so hopefully that doesn't look too bad. We'll see about that when I get to the editing stage. But anyway, if you want the PDF and the guitar profile for the solo, you can get that on my Patreon account. That's also a really good way to support my content so I can make even more of it. And if you haven't already, feel free to go back and watch the original video of the solo. Now, if you like this type of video, please let me know, because this is the first one I'm doing, so if no one likes it, I won't make another one. But if people say they like it, I'll make more, so let me know. Also, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That actually helps me a lot, so I would really like it if you did. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.